Hey, everybody. It's Karimah Rainmaker Stewart, and I am so delighted that you are here. Today, we actually have another juicy conversation in this Money Joy Masterclass series, and our guest today is Liz Wolfe. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of background on Liz, and then we are going to move into the question and answer part of our interview. Sound good, Liz?
Sounds great.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, by the way.
Yeah, thanks for asking me to come on, and thank you to everyone who's joining in and listening right now.
Awesome. Well, Liz is going to talk to us today about asking powerfully and receiving graciously. And we're going to get a little bit more into that a little later on, but first, before we go there, I want to share a little bit more information about Liz Wolfe. So I'm going to share her bio. Growing up on a sheep farm in Western Pennsylvania gave Liz her start in public speaking. When her family went to local festivals to sell their handcrafted wool items and educate the masses on the virtues of wool. She left the farming life and has since become a successful entrepreneur in New York City. Yes, NYC, great city. And for the past 20 years, she's actually inspired hundreds of people with her passionate stance of abundance. There is plenty for everyone, including me. So write that down. There is plenty for everyone, including me. She empowers her coaching clients with her unique system, a clear vision plus purposeful action minus hidden barriers equals breakthrough results. She has reached thousands more through her online abundance meditation and videos and has published dozens of articles. As a speaker, Liz incorporates transformational exercises as well as touching stories to motivate her audience. She'll keep your audience laughing. Always eager to get in front of a crowd, Liz also plays the ukulele and is half of the singing duo Eucalicious. All right. I love it. You're so powerful and eclectic. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I know there's going to be people that are probably wondering about your upbringing on a sheep farm and the irony of the fact that your name is Liz Wolfe. So give us some insight into that. That's a fun fact. We want to capture that.
Absolutely. Well, when I was about 5 years old, my mother and father decided to move to a farm and buy sheep. So my mother started buying sheep. At the height, we had about 300 sheep at a certain point. So I learned how to be an entrepreneur, as you mentioned in my bio, by what we used to do is we used to make items like sheepskin items, yarn, wool. We would shear the sheep, and we would even make a variety of food, lamb sandwiches, etc. And we would go to these festivals. My mother, this is, one of those things you admit. So my mother used to dress us up in colonial outfits and and have us spin wool and tell people about the virtues of wool. So from a very young age, and I mean like 12, I would sit there and spin wool with my sisters. I wasn't alone in these colonial outfits. So instead of making me run screaming from that world, I actually really enjoyed. I learned so much about being an entrepreneur, and I just learned to love to talk to people because people were really engaged and interested in what we did. So that was my beginning. And from there, I grew up, and I went to college in New England, and then I met my husband in New York City, and we started a business together. So I've basically been an entrepreneur for my entire life.
Wow.
Yes.
Started young.
Yes.
That's amazing.
And our saying was, wolf's the name, sheep's the game.
That's awesome. That is amazing. It's not every day that you meet someone who grew up on a sheep farm. So I thought it was really important that our audience gets to kind of hear that perspective. That's amazing. So tell us, so moving into our conversation around asking powerfully and receiving graciously. Now, there's this model that you have called the abundance cycle. And so can you just give us some insight into what was the inspiration around asking powerfully, giving wholeheartedly, and receiving graciously?
Certainly. Thank you for asking. So here's what I've learned, both in my own personal experience in being an entrepreneur and coaching hundreds of people, is that we tend to focus on we tend to focus on a few specific things that we think will grow our business or have us be successful.
Okay.
Those are time management. We think that if we get better at managing our time, if we only knew the right people, that would be great. And if we just worked harder. And under time management would come the discipline. If only I were more disciplined and I didn't procrastinate so much, and I wasn't so focused on, the things that aren't productive, and instead focused on the things that were, that busy cycle that we all go through. And what I found is that is a little bit of a rat race, and because you can always be more focused and always manage your time better and always be more disciplined, etc. But it doesn't necessarily generate the results that you were hoping or wishing for after that 15-hour day. So when I really sat down to study it, I realized that those three things that you said, which is asking powerfully for what you want, giving wholeheartedly also what you want, and then receiving graciously. Those things, if you can hone your skills on those and focus on that, you will go much faster, much quicker toward what it is that you want, and with much greater ease.
Okay.
So just to add one more thing to that, I think what happens is it's almost like we were given the wrong information, that we've been told our whole lives, just like I say to my son every day, well, focus on your homework, focus on your homework, get it done. And there's really not a lot of creativity in that. So it's really a very forward motion of like always feeling like I'm never quite there, always chasing after something, always working harder, always falling short.
Yes.
And with the abundance cycle of asking, giving, and receiving, you just let all of that go and you focus on only what you know will be most impactful.
Wow. Okay, that's pretty powerful, is because we live in a culture, well, I'll say, Western civilization, particularly, United States. And I know we have people from all over the world that will be watching, but just from our cultural milieu, there's this efforting and striving and clawing. And so that's such a radical idea to kind of release that and step into asking, giving, and receiving, and allowing everything that we desire to show up from that space, right? So that's pretty powerful and radical,
Yes.
And we're actually later on, we'll talk a little bit more about like how we actually get there. So for this conversation, we were going to focus on more of the asking powerfully and receiving graciously. If we have time, we'll, dig into giving wholeheartedly, but what does it mean to ask powerfully? Okay. You didn't just say ask, you said ask powerfully. And
Yes.
What does it actually look like in practice?
Yeah. Well, the number one thing when I say ask powerfully, what I mean is to be specific about what you want. So, for example, you could say, I want to be in a relationship. Okay. There are a lot of different types of relationships.
Right.
And we've all probably been in at least one or two we would not like to repeat again. So,
yes.
So, and some of us may currently be in one of those. And then you say, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I keep meeting the same type of people? So when I wanted to get married, I wrote out a list of what exactly I wanted. And I said, I described it so that I could see. My belief system says that I'm not just asking, by asking powerfully and specifically, the universe, or your version of whatever the universe is, will know what to give to me.
Yeah.
So the same thing is true for money. Often when I coach people, I say to them, how much money would you like to make? That's often a part of the work that I do, because when people are growing their business, money is an important part of that.
Absolutely.
And so I will say, okay, they'll always say the same thing. Well, I want to make more money. And I'll say, okay, how much more money? How much more money? Because $5 is more money, but that's probably not what you mean.
Right.
Right? You want to be very specific. I want to make $100,000. So you can use this for anything that you want. I used it when I bought my house. I used it when I bought my second house. I bought a place upstate, and I said very specifically how much acreage, whether there was water on the property, etc. You do it for a job, if you're looking for a job, whatever it is, you want to be specific. So that's number one.
Okay.
And number two, you want to ask for what you want, not for what you don't want.
Okay.
Okay. So what I mean by that is, you could say, I'm not sure what I want, but I know I don't want a man like that. Or I know I don't want my mother to criticize me. Or I know I don't want a job in finance. Or I know I don't want a client like that. So what the universe hears when you say that is, guy like that, job like that, job in finance, mother criticize, whatever those things are. So I'm not sure why, and just take my word for it, that it's only the parts of the sentence that carry the weight that get heard. For instance, if you ever go to a pool in the summertime and you see a lifeguard and you see a little kid running, the lifeguard does not say no running. The lifeguard says walk. Because if you say no running to the little kid running, they hear running, running, running.
Yeah.
So for many of us, we know what we don't want, but we're not clear about what we do want. So you might need to go through a thought process to journal it or ask your friend to sit with you to talk about it. This is work that I do with people as well. Get clear on what you want and be specific about it.
Okay. Great. Thank you for those practical examples that now people can actually take that and really begin to think about what is the language that they're using in their asking, right?
Yeah, very important.
Now, so we have asking powerfully. So now what does it mean to receive graciously, and what does that look like in practice?
Okay. So would you say, if I said to you, would you like to win the lottery? What would you say?
Heck yeah.
Right. Most of us would say yes, especially if it's a very large sum of money.
Absolutely.
However, if you look at any of the studies done on people who have actually won the lottery, you will find that the large majority of them are in worse financial shape than when they started. Before. The only exception to that are the people who already had money.
Wow.
I read a really interesting thing once in an article where she said, if you want to win the lottery, go get yourself a financial advisor. Get it now. Get a financial advisor now. You probably are never going to win the lottery.
Right.
But if you did, you would want a financial advisor. And if you don't, you still want a financial advisor. You want to take care of your money. So there's a way in which we actually are not good at receiving. So when I talk about the reason I bring up the lottery winners, it's because what's happening. Do you have plants in your house by any chance? Do you have any plants?
I have some. No, I don't have any live plants.
Okay.
I have the faux plants.
The faux plants.
So the don't need watering.
Exactly. So I'm terrible at watering my plants. I'm terrible at watering them. I have like 4, and I'm terrible at watering them. And then what happens is I notice they start to droop. So what I do is I always take them when it's time to water them. I take them to the sink and I put the water in to the pot, but I do it in the sink because what happens when you haven't watered a plant and you water it is all the water just runs out.
Wow.
So that is same thing with the lottery winners. If there's no way, no sponge, no way to absorb it, no way to receive it and actually capture it and keep it, it's just going to run right out, just like that water. Now, if you water a plant consistently and pour water into it, it won't do that. So what you want to be doing is looking to see what is the way in which you receive? You can see that very easily if you just have someone give you a compliment. Many people are like, oh, this old thing, or oh, that was nothing, or that.
Yeah.
Even something as simple as receiving a compliment. And so what we want to do is we want to expand our ability to receive. I always say most people think that they're receiving, like they're leaning back and receiving, but actually they're more like, because we're not sure. Do I want that? Do I not want that? We don't just receive.
Or or sometimes I know that people say, like, even there's a deservingness challenge. Like, do I deserve it? Right? But based on, how they were raised and what mom said about them, or dad, or their caregiver, or whatever. Right? And so it becomes like this self-worth value issue. Like, even sometimes when you're out to dinner and you say, hey, I got you, I'm going to pay for your meal. And a lot of people are like, oh, you don't have to do that, or no. But when people say that to me, I say, oh, thank you, I received that.
Yes.
Because I don't want to block that.
Absolutely. Thank you. I have a personal philosophy. If someone offers me money, I take it.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't I want to take it? If I drive someone somewhere and they say, can I give you $5 for gas? Okay, thank you.
Can.
I'm sure there's some exceptions to that where maybe it's not as appropriate for whatever reason, but I want money, so I want to receive money. I want to always receive it. So that's a really great example. Yeah, allow people to give to you. I mean, we're not going to talk too much about the giving part, but that's part of it. Is, you see, you can't actually have giving unless you have receiving.
Absolutely.
They go together. So if you've ever been frustrated by trying to give something to someone, that's because they're blocking that receiving.
Yeah, they don't even know it.
No, that's frustrating.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I find that people who want to break free of, this vicious cycle, like, they really just have to kind of identify and be aware. And so some of the tools that you are giving us is calling us to kind of pay attention to where we might be blocking money or not receiving money, and it may not even be money, it might be other things.
Love.
Yeah.
Help.
Yeah.
Getting support from someone, and anything. The comfort.
Yeah.
Some of us won't take a day and go to a spa, or just allow somebody. So part of the thing about receiving, why we don't like to receive sometimes, is because we feel like we'll be obligated to reciprocate.
Oh, that's good.
That there's some obligation that will come in there, right? So we want to be sure, I'm saying typically we want to be sure that we want the thing before we accept it, because we don't want to have to be obligated to that person if we didn't even want it to begin with.
Oh, that's good.
And
I know somebody like that. Yeah.
So, I mean, and there's a lot of reasons. All of these things that we're talking about are coming from the beliefs that we have around asking, giving, and receiving. And, a lot of people will say to me, oh, yeah, I want lots of money. I want to receive, I want love. But when we start to get into the weeds with it, it isn't that you don't want it, but you're not practiced at receiving it. And when we dig underneath that, what we see is that we were actually trained sometimes. Like, do any of you have parents who, when you went to someone else's house, you weren't allowed to accept what they offered you? Like, like you were supposed to just sit and pretend you didn't want anything.
You don't want to be a burden, right?
You don't want to be a burden. Maybe they had a candy dish and you weren't allowed to go near. And would you like a piece of candy? You were supposed to say no, because that was impolite. So now I'm a grown up and I don't need to follow that anymore, but I still have that initial, like, no, I'm not going to receive it.
Yeah.
So we're only having a very short conversation about this, but you can see how it begins to get much trickier and much more complicated than you would have expected.
Absolutely. And I love how you're, like, weaving all three of these together. They're all three of them are very important. And so how do we know when we are not in the abundance cycle? You kind of mentioned some things previously, but what are some other things? What might be showing up in our lives that might give us a clue that we're not in the abundance cycle?
Well, for sure, you're tired. That's one thing. You are tired. You feel a little bit like you're on the hamster wheel, and you're frustrated. You're frustrated because you feel like it should be coming to you easier than it is. And so when you're in that abundance flow, things do come to you more easily because it's a more direct way to what you want. The power of asking for what you want is when you ask for exactly what you want, you're more likely to get it rather than the beating around of the bush or the hoping or the wishing or the wanting. It's a very direct route, which just feels so much easier to do. It's become such second nature to me to just automatically ask that I'm not even surprised about it anymore when it happens, but every once in a while I reflect on it. So for instance, I was just in Key West for a vacation, family vacation, and they closed the pool at 10 o'clock. And my daughter and I wanted to go sit in the hot pool, for the hot tub. And I didn't realize it closed at 10. So I went down and the guy was cleaning up and we were walking in and I said, let me, I don't know. He said something like, the pool's closed. And I said, oh, well, is it okay if we just sit for 5 minutes while you're cleaning up? And then he said, sure, go ahead. And then he just walked away. And he was like gone. So we were there for half an hour and he left us. So the point is, I didn't even think about it. I just asked.
Yeah.
And he didn't really care. Okay, the pool's closed. So there's so many times when we just assume that there's no other option available to us that we don't even bother to ask. But it was so easy. I got to enjoy my evening with my daughter. I think it might have been the last night we were there. And then that was it. It's just easy. Life will be easier for you if you focus on these.
Yeah. And what I hear in that story is that you have a different belief system around asking and receiving and giving, right? Because somebody who believes in possibility, somebody that believes that everything is negotiable, everything is available, like that's where you're come from. So it's quite easy for you to say, can we just stay for 5 minutes while you clean up, right? So that really reflected me that you've done the inner work to, rewire your brain and actually be in a space where abundance is possible on so many levels. I mean, that was just a simple example,
right?
Being at the pool, right? That's amazing. Yeah. So how does living in abundance, in the abundance cycle, how does this quicken our access to more joy, flow, and infinite wealth right now? Because that's the big picture around this entire masterclass is not tomorrow, not when I have $1 million. I can have abundance right now. I can have joy. I can have ease. So how does the abundance cycle quicken our access to infinite wealth, joy, and ease?
So the part I didn't talk about yet is the receive graciously. And what does it mean to receive graciously? And the gracious part is really about appreciation and gratitude. So what's the saying? If you want to have what you want what you have. Have you heard that? So to have what you want what you have. So at any given moment, focusing on gratitude for the experience that you have right now in this present moment and allowing that experience, you can feel grateful at any moment without even changing anything about your life, because it's all about perspective. And so the graciously part, I throw it in with the receiving, like receive graciously, but it's actually a 4-part cycle. It's asking, giving, receiving, and then experiencing gratitude. And what's really wonderful about this is that you can start anywhere on that cycle. So anytime that you feel stuck, you can say, you know what, I'm just going to sit here and feel grateful. I'm just going to bring gratitude, or you could write a gratitude list.
Okay.
You could, the part about giving is you could say, I feel stuck on money, so I'm going to give some money right now. As you know, I play the ukulele, right? So for example, One of the things I do is I go into Central Park and I busk for money. That's where you play and you put your face out and people give you money, which is a really great exercise in abundance, creating money, because people just walk along and give me money. I mean, I'm playing, but they give me money. I did the other day. We made $45.
Nice.
So I can start anywhere in that cycle by saying, I want money, so let me give money. I want whatever it is, I can say, let me see how I'm receiving. Does someone want to support me right now? Let me allow that support to come in. Let me practice asking for what I want. It's all a practice. Every step of this is a practice. Did I answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gratitude is definitely a way. You basically said that it's a way for us to access abundance now, right? And that's exactly what, I want people to get, is that mindset shift is so important. When you say so, when you say I am abundant, you're abundant. You get to, and it cannot help but show up in the physical realm, right? So gratitude, these are just like spiritual tools and practices that we can use to shift it right away. And so we can have access to our infinite ease, our infinite joy, and our infinite wealth, like right now. So I'm looking at the time, but I also want to, this has been really yummy. I could go on all night, but got to be mindful of the time. Any last burning nuggets that you just have to tell our viewing audience? If there's nothing else you can say, what is that one thing that you really want to share and hope that they get and access?
So my personal philosophy about abundance, as you said in the beginning, is that there's plenty for everyone, including me. So often we leave ourselves out of that abundance cycle. We focus so much on creating abundance for other people, and somehow it feels selfish to experience abundance ourselves. And abundance in and of itself doesn't have an opinion where it's going to go. It's going to go where it's attracted to. And so allow, the beautiful giving is wonderful, but allow the abundance to come to you as well, so that is where we all will create satisfaction and joy, is in that fully all of us experiencing abundance, including me.
Thank you so much. And you have a complimentary offer for the viewing audience that has to do with asking powerfully. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
So as I'm sure that you have heard during this, during this call, asking, giving, and receiving is a lot more complicated than just go out and ask. So there are a lot of reasons that we don't ask, that we didn't get a chance to cover today. So I have a guide called The Power of Asking. And in that guide, it will go into more detail about why we don't ask for what we want. And then it gives you some actual practical exercises that you can do to practice asking, because that's the number one way that you're going to create more, is to practice, practice, practice.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. This was great. Asking powerfully and receiving graciously. Oh, I'm just like all delighted. Now I'm going to go run around my living room and kick up my heels. And this was so fascinating. I love the depth at which you brought and the real life practical examples that we all can use. So we're just going to go ahead and end the conversation here. But before we do, I just wanted to thank not only you, Liz, for who you are and how you're showing up in the world, and just kind of bringing the gifts that you've been given and sharing them with all of us. And so it's just such a blessing to have your presence and have your insight and wisdom on this masterclass. So thank you for saying yes to the masterclass.
Yes. So there you go. I received the invitation. I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
So and great job with all of these interviews that you're doing. I know they are all amazing, and you are doing an awesome job. So thank you so much for inviting me and sharing this wisdom in the world, because it's really something the world could use right now.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
I appreciate that. And so for those of you who are viewing our class today, we want to know, what is your takeaway? What are some things that you are going to put into practice? Email us back. Let us know. Involve us in your life and in the conversation. We want to know what impact this conversation has had on you, and what some of your takeaways are. And be sure to share it with friends and family, so that they can shift their relationship to asking powerfully, giving wholeheartedly, and receiving graciously. Liz, thank you.
Thank
Viewing
you.
audience, thank you, and we'll see you next time on another the next conversation in the Money Joy Masterclass. Karimah Rainmaker Stewart signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.